Okay, well, since I'm not hearing any feedback on needing more time, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start. So remember just basic navigation within the system. I mean, everyone should be in here, but the navigation menu over here, what we're going to do is we're going to be operating under the reports tabs here. So everyone go to the reports. And like I said, we have various reports here. You may or may not be able to see it just because the different users are going to be able to access different reports in the system. So you may not see everything that's on my screen, but what we're going to do is we're going to start up here on the very top hand corner here. Can everyone see this report? That's this button up here in the top right corner that says New Report. I'm going to assume the silence says yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click New Report, and we're going to go in here and we're going to click on Matrix Reports. So this top option right here. So it's New Report. And we're going to go ahead and click on Matrix Report. So this is the basic entry screen on some of the back-end points of reporting. So this is a screen that that we'll become very familiar with today. And so we'll go over some of the basic elements to it, some of the really key theories on it, because what I'm trying for everyone to come out of this class with is to really understand the theory behind the reporting of it, because when you understand the theory, you'll be able to manipulate the reports in any way possible. So what I don't want you to do is focus so much on the actual data that we're just like the specific report we're going to develop right now. What I want you to do is just really kind of think about the theory. And so make sure that's what I really want us to do, to focus on here. All right, so the first two things that I'm just going to point out is you have your items where it says you can drag to add your rows and drag to add your columns. And so what one of the buttons that you're going to want to really become familiar with here is down here in the design elements in the bottom left-hand corner right here. One of the items here, you can see this thing where it says a segment. What we can do is you can just click it and drag it right in here. And so you can drag it into the rows and drag one into the columns. The segments will become more important. You know, we'll be able to see it, and a number of these things will make a lot more sense as we keep on going along. But what we've done here is we've just added a segment we've added a segment to our rows and added a segment to our columns. And so that's where we're actually going to put some of our data. So what I was thinking we'd do today is we'd just come up with a basic budget to actuals report today. We can do a basic budget to actuals for FY21. We'll do a basic budget to actuals FY21. That'll be something that we can do, and so we'll focus on some of those items there. So if we're going to do a budget to actuals, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to be showing our budget in actual data for FY21 up here in our columns, and we'll want to put our expense details here on the row columns here. So this is where we're going to become a lot more familiar with a number of these items over here on the left-hand side. We'll get into some of these. Like I said, I want to focus more on the theory behind this, because I want you to be able to find the different resources, because just because we're doing a budget to actual doesn't mean, you know, there's going to be various types of reports. We're going to have compensation reports. We're going to have all these different sorts of reports. And so there's going to be various different things that we're going to have here. But to do a basic budget to actuals report, one of the areas, like if you're ever going to be operating in either revenues or expenses, you're going to want to get familiar with this accounts roll up right here. So under accounts and under GL accounts, we can see that we have revenues and expenses. Since we don't really budget revenues at the moment right now, so we're not really going to focus on the revenue side of it, but the theory of what we're going to do with expenses holds true for expenses as well. So what we can do is we can continue to drill into expenses, and as you see, once we get into the expense, you can drill in. As you can see, most of these are kind of all rolling up to the same numbers here. But what we can do is we can use this 700,000 number right here, the total expense contingency. And all we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and drag that right into the report here. And so you can see it's just an easy, quick, just drag and drop into the system. So now what we've done is we put our expenses into the report. So what we're doing is, so this right here will give us both our actuals and our budgeted expenses once we pull the report. So we'll come back to this one, because what I want to do is I want to go to another element to it. So now what I want to do is now we're going to go ahead and collapse the GL accounts. And so we're done with our accounts that we need right here. So this is another button that's going to have you become familiar with. To get back to the base menu on the left-hand side, you want to get to know this back to the elements button right here. So all you got to do is click back to the elements, and it brings us back to our main menu here to give us all the options that we want here. So when we went over the basics of HTML reporting and a lot of the basic courses that we did, there were a couple areas that I briefly touched on, because it was hard to explain during those times, and those were the time elements and the version elements. So we touched on those briefly there. This is the point where this is going to become very important. And so this is where we're going to focus a lot more on that now. And so now that we're going to be going into these specific reports, this information should become a lot more meaningful than when we were just discussing them. So whenever we're trying to pull any data, I'm going to repeat this probably 2 or 3 times during this entire training just because it's so important. To pull data, what you have to do is you have to specify a specific account that you want to pull it on. So we've already done our accounts by dragging this in here. But then you're going to have to specify a specific version, and you're going to have to specify a time element. Those 2 are very critical items here. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we're specifying the time and the version elements. And so what we'll do is, why don't we tackle each of those independently? We'll do the easiest one first. Let's go into the time elements here, because what we need to do is we need to bring in our time element that we want to report on. And since we're going to do just a basic FY21 budget to actuals report, all we have to do here is we can just see that where it says FY21, all we have to do is just drag it into the columns right here. And so now you can see we have FY21 up on our little column sheet here. So what we've done is now we've specified the time that we want to work it. So if we want to work with any of these other data, I'll just give you a quick hint. 17 and 18, there's no data behind any of that, so there's nothing there behind that. But we have data loaded for 19, 20, 21, and 22 right now. So in any of these reports that you're trying to work with, you can specify those time elements. I'll show you how to break it down, like if you wanted to look at it by month, by quarter, we'll get into that. But right now, let's just look at it from an annual basis. So right now, I've just dragged in FY21 here. And remember, to get back to our main menu screen right here, we have this back to the elements. And so we'll go ahead and click the back to the elements. And so now what we want to do is now we want to take a look at the versions. I'm going to go ahead and click the versions right here, but I'm going to pause here real quick to see, does anyone have any questions, and has everyone been able to follow along? Because I can go back and redo anything, re-show anything. I just want to make sure that everyone's been able to follow along and understand where we are and how we got here. So for this, what we're trying to do here is now we're trying to bring in what's going to be our FY21 budget and our FY21 actuals. So you see the term budget versions here. This is a bit of a misnomer in terms of when we're talking about budgets, because what a budget version is budget version is more the forward-looking thing. If you actually click down here, you can see it's just the FY22 budget. It's the only thing in there. And so what that's doing is, because the budget versions are more looking at, all right, how are we moving forward? And the term budget in Adaptive is going to be a little bit different as we move forward, because the budget is what the initial budget is. And then budget adjustments happen after the fact. So where we're going to actually operate for this report right here is we're going to be operating under this little actuals node here. You can see a little green circle here. This is where we're going to be operating. And so what we'll do is we'll expand that. And so what you can see here is you can see all the different options you have. And you can see, remember how I said we're going to be doing a budget to actuals report here. The FY21 budget is in here. I'm going to go ahead and expand it just to show it to you, because the different options under the budget, like if you were just looking at what our startup was, or what the true up was, or what the PO roll was in a given year, and also your budget adjustments are also in here. But what we can do is we can actually look at it. Since this is the roll up right here, this is the top level roll up right here, we can actually work with the FY21 budget. So I can just go ahead and just drag this in. And what we'll do is we will put this below FY21. It actually doesn't really matter for this purpose where it's going to go, but sometimes you just have to be mindful of whether the hierarchy is like the year or in the version, or the version in the year. So it can matter, but for now it really doesn't matter for this report here. So we have the FY21 budget under the time element of FY21 with the total expense contingency here. So what I'm going to tell us to do right now is let's go ahead and actually just run this report. You can see up here the run report button. We'll go ahead and just run this report where it is right now, just so you can actually see what's going to come in here. And so the data and the numbers are probably going to be quite a bit different here than what you see on my screen versus your screen, because it's a lot of this information is dependent on the level of access that you have. And so this is just kind of a wide open report right now for whatever levels of access that you would have.